Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for Ward 9 City Council Candidate Forum focused on the health and recovery of the Lake Street Cultural Corridor. This virtual forum is hosted by a collection of community-centered organizations that serve South Minneapolis, including the Corcoran Neighborhood Organization, Longfellow Business Association, Lake Street Council, and Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. We are so glad to have you with us. My name is Tabitha Montgomery, and I happen to serve as the Executive Director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. And I'm honored to serve as the MC and the moderator for this evening's event. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. We are using Zoom webinar, which means you can see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. We have enabled the live captioning feature, which you can turn on or off by clicking Enable Closed Captioning at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions for the candidates throughout our time together today, please make sure you use the Q&A feature to type into your question. We'll have time for candidates to answer your questions directly in just a bit. Finally, we are recording this webinar and we will share it on the Facebook pages of the host organizations by the end of the week. As you know, we have an important election coming up in under a month on November 2nd. All 13 Minneapolis City Council members and the Minneapolis Mayor are up for election this year, as are all Park Board commissioners and 2 Board of Estimate and Taxation members. For more information about when, where, and how to vote, you can actually follow a couple of links that I'm going to drop into the chat now, and you can check out information in terms of where you can vote and what will be on your specific ballot. Before we hear from candidates, let me take a moment to frame the importance of the forum's focus. Within the city of Minneapolis, the Lake Street Cultural Corridor is an essential, central, and cultural artery. It is fueled by micro and macro, and perhaps more noticeably, culturally specific businesses along the East Lake Street corridor. As likely everyone listening to tonight's candidate forum understands, the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and the civil unrest after the heinous murder of George Floyd has created a new range of investment needs across the Lake Street corridor and South Minneapolis as a whole. This includes the need for public and private dollars to aid the recovery and ongoing well-being of businesses and residents throughout the community. The host of tonight's forum, the Corcoran Neighborhood Organization, Longfellow Business Association, Lake Street Council, and Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association are committed to partnering in a variety of ways to help maintain awareness, concern, and action that support the economic and community health of the area. Given the role that the City Council members play in directing one-time and general operating resources toward our community, this forum is one way that these organizations are working to help the broader community make informed decisions about who can best represent the community's interests and needs. So let's go ahead and get started and hear from candidates. In their opening statement, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and to describe how they plan to prioritize the rebuilding and recovery of the Lake Street corridor if elected. We will first hear from candidate Jason Chavez. Candidate Chavez, your time will start once the timer in the upper left-hand corner, or at least my screen, turns green. Again, you will have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Chavez. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the DFL, DSA, and labor endorsed candidate for the Minneapolis City Council here in the 9th Ward. And before I begin, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to the Lake Street Council, Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association, Corcoran Neighborhood Organization, and the Longfellow Business Association for hosting tonight's event. I'm a proud LGBTQ plus Latino, a renter, an organizer, and policy worker at the Minnesota House of Representatives on the Workforce and Business Development Committee. So basically serving the people of our state by passing massive unemployment insurance expansion during this pandemic, making sure we passed and secured grants for our small businesses that are being impacted by COVID-19 and the civil unrest, like the ones on Lake Street and 38th in Chicago, and building relationships to make sure that when we get to City Hall, we have the relationships necessary to make sure that the 9th Ward is being prioritized. I was born and raised in the 9th Ward by my hardworking Mexican immigrant parents, so I know the amount of work that is needed to make sure that we represent all of our communities well. I'm ready to fight against the years of underinvestment, prioritizing our corridor, passing a public safety system that keeps all of us safe, and making sure that we have fair wages to keep our communities intact, while at the same time fighting for clean air, safe water and soil, and making sure we can take care of our communities here in the 9th Ward. in regards to rebuilding efforts, it's important that we listen to the people doing the work, the people that are struggling on our corridor. Community ownership of building is going to be really critical to make sure we hold the greedy landlords accountable on Lake Street that are preying on our small business owners, making sure we pass commercial evictions, and that's time.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez, for policing yourself, for cutting yourself off so we didn't have to use the mute button. I appreciate you. Candidate Yusuf Haji, you are up next. You have 2 minutes to do your opening statement and your remarks. And again, if you can speak to how you will support, if elected, the rebuilding and recovery of the Lake Street corridor, that would be great.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, your time just wanted to say it starts when it turns green.
My name is Yusuf Haji. I am married to a beautiful, my wife, Anissa. I am a father of 4 children. For me, personally, running in this race and being in this race is very personal for me because I am a small business owner, as you probably have heard so many times. For me also, I have a big heart for people, for civil rights, for dialogue and understanding, and also building a strong, diverse community and inclusive community that is. These passions and commitments have made me to run for office. For 15 years, I've been vocal to bring civil rights, interfaith dialogue, and understanding. I've worked for Minnesota Department of Revenue as a senior outreach coordinator. I have graduated from St. Cloud State University with mass communication in media, and I'm also a graduate of Augsburg University in Masters in Leadership as well. Both my wife and I, like I said, a business owner. I was the first one to create a multilingual media company. And also my wife and I also run an organic distribution company right here on the corridor of Lake Street. So we do have a lot of businesses that we do provide service to. And more importantly for me, what I want to do is I want to prioritize Black, Indigenous, people of color, and minority-owned businesses on Lake Street. That's very important for me, and I'm gonna talk about that more. Support entrepreneurs, business retention, and as well making sure there's inclusive economic solution to all of areas that most of this community live and call home.
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. Now we will hear from Candidate Mickey Moore. Candidate Mickey Moore, your time will start when the timer, when you in the upper hand of your corner turns green. You will have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you and good evening. Thank you for hosting this event. My name is Mickey Moore. I was born and raised in South Minneapolis, and I've lived here my whole life. I'm the only labor and public safety endorsed candidate, and I'm running to represent Ward 9 because our neighborhoods are suffering from an unprecedented number of crises. I'm also running because this city has given me so much over the years, and I want to ensure that our children have the same opportunities that I did. I also want to make it clear that I'm not running on any personal agendas or because of issues that have affected me or my family. On the contrary, I'm running because of your issues and to do what's in the best interest of you, your families, and our community. A lot of people remember me as the guy who opened the Braid Factory back in 1996, still the most popular hair braiding location today with over 300,000 clients served. From our first location on Lake Street, it's been amazing to see the natural hair care industry grow into over 50 locations, including several that are operating on Lake Street today. The industry I began gainfully employs hundreds of African-American and immigrant women and is just one example of why I am uniquely qualified to unite our community around practical, solution-oriented strategies that will move the Ninth Ward and our Lake Street business corridors in the right direction. It takes leadership and experience to understand how businesses and governments work together, how to supervise and manage people, how to balance large budgets, how to work across communities and cultures, across government agencies from multiple jurisdictions and levels of government. I believe with strong and experienced representation, we can address our situation on Lake Street by prioritizing our minority-owned and immigrant-owned small businesses and giving them the support, resources, and partnership that a city government needs to make sure that they grow and prosper. We need the lion's share of that one-time money you talked about, Tabitha, to make sure that our businesses are truly restored and healthy.
Thank you so much, Candidate Moore. And again, thank you for ending on time. Certainly not least but last, we will hear from Candidate Brenda Short. Brenda, you will have 2 minutes to do your opening statements and to, if you could, address how would you, if elected, support the rebuilding and the recovery of the Lake Street corridor. Your time will start when you see the timer turn green in the upper hand corner of your screen.
Hi, my name is Brenda Short. I am running for City Council in Ward 9. I am a business owner that has my business off of East Lake Street. The reason why I'm running is because I've been living in South Minneapolis for years, over 27 years with my business. And it has been hard for all of the small businesses on East Lake Street and Chicago Avenue. Due to COVID, we had to shut our doors due to COVID and after the unrest. What I feel is necessary to bring back East Lake Street is first, public safety. We need to make sure that our community feels safe and our business stays safe and feel safe to keep their business here. What I like to also start is more events off of East Lake Street, family events, so we can bring our visitors back to our ward, because we need our visitors to promote our business, to let them know that it's okay and there are good businesses here. I would also like to support our small businesses by helping them. A lot of times there's grants available. Even though we have the access to it, we don't know how to apply to it. And I would like to form a program that teaches them how to apply for those grants. And once again, my name is Brenda Short. I'm running for City Council in Ward 9. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Candidate Short, and thank you all to the candidates for being here with us tonight and introducing yourselves. We're now ready to move on to the next phase of our event, where we will hear directly from candidates in response to audience questions. If you're joining us today, please use the Q&A feature to ask the questions that you would like the candidates to respond to related to the health and recovery of the Lake Street corridor or other areas that you believe are essential for candidates to address. Again, as I mentioned before, the host of tonight's forum have prepared a few questions to get us started, but we will certainly prioritize the questions that we receive from those who are in attendance with us this evening. To be fair to the candidates, we will alternate which candidates answers first to the various questions that are presented. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the questions that are put before them. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first question is going to begin with candidate Haji. And so Candidate Haji, I'm going to read the question. If you need me to restate it, you can ask me to do so once. So the Lake Street corridor has experienced unprecedented challenges and disruptions in the last 18 months. As a city council member, how will you lead the effort to revitalize the businesses and neighborhoods along Lake Street? What specific policies will you implement to ensure a full recovery? You have 2 minutes, and again, your time will start when you see the timer in the upper hand corner turn green.
Thank you so much for that great questions. As I said, and I stated before, there is so much potential on this part of Ward 9, all the way to 38. And we can do so much for these communities that have been both affected by COVID and crime. As you all know, nobody can do business as usual if there is free reign and criminals are running around, even blocking access to some of these business corridors. You have stories of people coming to me and explaining to me that they don't have access to their business because people are sitting right in front of their door and they cannot open their businesses. And people are just sitting there, and some even threatening. So we must do something about it. You have business owners that are also complaining about used syringes that are being thrown right on outside their businesses. And they have to wake up every morning, clean these places up on their own, using their own resources. So we must do something about it. I've sat with the business leaders in Lake Street, and they have literally told me and explained to me some of the challenges they are facing include access to money. And some of these businesses, our Latino and our East African communities, are the most impacted businesses. And our established community also. If you go inside of Ward 9, there's so many small pockets, small businesses that are also going through these challenges, all of them. And we need to give them the necessary support so that they're able to recover from COVID. And also, more importantly, we must provide safety and security for these businesses to be able to be open. We need to have neighborhood and community organization working together to push out the pimps and drug dealers from Lake Streets so that our community feels safer, people can come back and start getting in. If we invest
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. Again, the same question to Candidate Moore. The Lake Street Corridor has experienced unprecedented challenges and disruptions in the last 18 months. As a City Council member, how will you lead the effort to revitalize the businesses and neighborhoods along the Lake Street Corridor? What specific policies will you implement to ensure a full recovery? You have 2 minutes. And again, please, wherever the box is on your screen, be mindful of the timer.
Yes, well, when you say unprecedented, you don't mean across the country, but really within Minneapolis. It's important for us to recognize that Ward 9 was the most adversely affected ward in our city. It was our police station that burned down. It was our Lake Street corridor that was the ground zero center of all the civil unrest. It was our ward that had the tragic murder of George Floyd. And we have been suffering the consequences of these really horrific issues and crises. So when I present our case in front of the City Council for why our ward deserves the lion's share, the massive, vast majority of the available stimulus funds and financing packages that are available, it's got to be a solid case based on facts and evidence presented by a professional and articulate advocate for our ward. So that's the biggest part of solving our problem, is making sure that our ward gets that lion's share of the money. The restorative funds must flow through Ward 9. Yes, we have to solve our public safety crisis. Absolutely. We need to rebuild our police precinct. We need to reestablish our substations. We need to increase the use of surveillance cameras and make sure that we're partnering with our small businesses to see that their needs are met. You know, in Bangkok, Thailand, every night, 7 nights a week, when businesses close down, they have a street sweeping and cleaning crew that come through and make sure everything looks good for the next day. So if they can do that in Thailand, I think that we could do that in Minneapolis if we want. The biggest important thing to remember here is it's not that we don't have solutions. We have the solutions. What this city needs are the leaders that are willing to put aside their petty political differences and make sure that solutions are turned into good public policy.
Thank you so much, Candidate Moore. Candidate Short, the same question to you. The Lake Street Corridor has experienced unprecedented challenges and disruptions in the last 18 months. As a City Council member, how will you lead the effort to revitalize the businesses and neighborhoods along Lake Street? What specific policies will you implement to ensure a full recovery? Your time will start now.
Thank you. I will say it again, it's public safety. I speak to a lot of my business members that are on East Lake Street, and the safety has gone out of control. Mr. Wolf from Chicago and Lake, he can't even call the police if someone steals something from his location. So my thing is, I believe that we should have more police presence around our businesses, because that will bring the violence down, because they will think twice before they do something out of the ordinary. I would also make sure that we have more support in our businesses. As I said before, there's a lot of grants that businesses are denied for because they do not know how to fill out those forms properly. And if those forms was broken down so they could understand, they would see more money, because the money is there. I truly believe the money is there. Without a specialist, you wouldn't know that you're missing something. Also, I would definitely like to see affordable insurance for our businesses. Our small businesses are struggling just to pay their bills every day, but having insurance for their family is very important to a lot of business owners that live off of East Lake Street. And I would definitely start a program so the small business owners would have support to get affordable insurance and know the proper steps to apply for these grants, so they can succeedingly get these grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Short. And now to you, Candidate Chavez.
Yeah.
The Lake Street Corridor, did you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
The Lake Street Corridor has experienced unprecedented challenges and disruptions in the last 18 months. As a City Council member, how will you lead the effort to revitalize the businesses and neighborhoods along Lake Street? And what specific policies will you implement to ensure a full recovery? Your 2 minutes starts now.
Yeah, so I currently work, like I mentioned earlier, at the Minnesota House of Representatives on the Workforce and Business Development Committee. So all year round, I've been working with small businesses to make sure that we prioritize the rebuilding efforts of Lake Street. So that meant that we passed $80 million to support small businesses that were impacted by the civil unrest. It meant that we passed more than $60 million to support small businesses that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's work that I'm doing right now. I've been going door to door on our small businesses, letting them know how to apply for these funds, making sure they have access to it, because it's important that we have people that know how to help them apply. We also need to make sure that we expand and support our small business technical assistant program at the city. It helps ensure that people have advice, consultation, navigation, and services in different languages. It will make sure that our small businesses have that support. It's also important that we have anti-gentrification policies. There's corporate developers, there's people taking corporate money here, and we want to make sure that we are fighting against the gentrification that is happening on our corridor. It means fighting for community ownership of buildings, commercial evictions, protections, making sure we have rent relief programs. People have $7,000 in debt and they're being forced to leave the Lake Street corridor. We can keep them here and we can keep our cultural corridor intact. It also means having participatory budgeting sessions so our Lake Street corridor has a say on where our money goes. And it's also addressing the public safety concerns, right? Addressing the public safety concerns by bringing the CSS program here to make sure our corridor is safe, making sure we address the Lake Street livability issues, but also making sure we don't just focus on recovery, but the growth of Lake Street by fighting off the gentrification, ensuring that we feel safe here, and ensuring we continue to bring money to rebuild efforts.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez. We're going to pivot to a new question, and this is from one of our attendees. And so this is related to policing and police funding. So we will need each candidate to respond to this question, and we'll start with Candidate Moore. Where do you stand on police funding? What should be cut and what should be increased? Candidate Moore, you will have 2 minutes. Your time starts now.
Well, I'd have to see very clearly what the police budget entailed as a city council person to know what waste there was, but you can be sure that there is waste. You know that we're over militarizing our police, and there's a lot of budgetary lines that can be struck just from the over equipping and over militarization of their weaponry and everything else. But in terms of providing resources, we are so understaffed right now. We need to work to get our numbers back up so that we have enough police to properly respond to calls for assistance. We need to target, hire, and recruit members of our own community, members of the minority community, women officers, members who speak multiple languages, who reflect our own community, and then we'll be more apt to provide the kind of community service that we're looking for. But we need more resources than that. We need to increase our body camera usage and our oversight. We need to increase our closed circuit surveillance camera usage and the oversight of that. People don't even realize we only have about 25 or 30 security cameras around the city, and they're only watched 55 hours a week. We need many more times the amount of cameras that we're using, and we need to have them watched 24 hours a day. So the kind of resources that we need to inject into our police budget are substantial. If we can find ways to pull those resources from other areas of the budget that are experiencing waste, that's great. But it may require an additional investment of resources to bring our police department to a level that can cope with the level of public safety crisis that we're going through right now.
Thank you so much, Candidate Moore. Candidate Short, the same question to you. Can you please tell us where you stand on police funding? What should be cut and what should be increased? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Thank you. First of all, I believe what should be cut is the purchase of weapons. Certain weapons are not needed for policing. I definitely seen misuse of purchases a lot in the police force. What I would increase is the mental health for the police officers. Everyone is human. They also do need to go somewhere so they can release some stress. If that's a gym or if that's to talk to someone, they do need that mental health, because every job is stressful, but putting your life on the line is really stressful. I would support COPE, the program we're not utilizing. COPE is a mental health program that runs 24 hours that is attached to the 911 and the 311. Some of those calls can go out to the city. A lot of those calls could be used, but we're not using all the sources. And that is one program I would put funds in. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Short. Candidate Chavez, the same question to you. Can you please tell us where do you stand on police funding? What should be cut and what should be increased? You have 2 minutes. Your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think thinking about public safety solely in police funding is very limiting. I think we need a public safety system that reduces violence and addresses the root causes that create violence in our neighborhoods. Our community members deserve to feel safe here. They deserve to feel safe, free from police violence and community violence that's happening. So I support increasing public safety funding to address the public safety concerns in our neighborhoods like gun violence. I want to call for a gun violence epidemic and public health crisis to increase funds on gun tracing programs that are culturally based and evidence-based to make sure that these guns get off the streets, making sure that we use public safety funding to address the livability concerns on Lake Street, making sure we bring the CSS program that I mentioned earlier that is on the ground, that is a first responder to address any concerns that is happening in our neighborhoods, while making sure we address the livability concerns, right? Public safety dollars should be addressing concerns of public safety. It should be addressing the concerns of housing. It should be addressing the concerns that is impacting our neighborhoods here. I want to make sure there's increased funding with mental health support, making sure that there's an effort to actually get to the root cause of violence that is impacting our neighborhoods here in the 9th Ward. And I also want to make sure that when we cut funding, it should be about cutting the funding that has like big militarized weapons from the police department. Why does the police department have militarized weapons? That should not be a thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez. And Candidate Haji, to you the same question. Can you please tell us where do you stand on police funding? What should be cut and what should be increased? You have 2 minutes. That begins now. I'm sorry, Candidate Haji, you're on mute.
My apologies. As we speak right now, we have less police. We have less resources to combat the runaway crime that we're experiencing in Ward 9. You cannot imagine the kind of violence that happens every night. I live right on Bloomington and 26, and you hear gunshots. Every Ward 9 residence I visit, every business I talk to, they're all talking about this violence. So we need to be able to make sure that we have resources to make sure we can get police officers who are from our communities, who have lived for 2 years residency in our communities, who are familiar. I recommend also having foot patrols instead of having police vehicles during summertime, right? This connects our communities, it connects us together, and it keeps us all safer. Having police presence makes our business safer. I can speak from experience, maybe not as a police officer, but working as a security guard at the Vikings game on a Sunday way back in 2002. I knew when I put on those security uniform, I was preventing something because people looked at that uniform as a form of authority. So our police do not have to always respond in such a violent way. There is so many places that we can cut that are not necessary. But for me, I really want to be able to divide the function of our police into two. One that responds to serious cases, and two that is more humane and responds to issues that don't need police presence. And that's where I'm going to focus on as a city councilman. I want to bring us all together because I'm not the only one with the solution. All of us have ideas, and I think that's why my leadership is important in getting all 12 city councilmen together to find a solution.
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. The next question is again from our attendees, one of our attendees this evening, and it's related to the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, specifically city budget and federal programs. The city of Minneapolis received about $270 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. The city has allocated most of those funds in ways that should help businesses, residents, and government agencies recover from lost wages, profits, and missing revenue during COVID-19 pandemic. How would you invest the remaining $50 million? And we will start with you, candidate Short.
I would definitely support more businesses to our area. And that would be half of it. The other half would have to go to the businesses who've been here to make sure they stay here. A lot of my friends that own businesses in the area, they're offered to go somewhere else to a suburb, and I don't want them to leave. And that is what I would do with those funds. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Short. The same question to you, candidate Chavez. The city of Minneapolis received about $270 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. The city has allocated most of those funds in ways that should help businesses, residents, and government agencies recover from lost wages, profits, and missing revenue due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How would you invest the remaining $50 million of these funds? Your time starts now. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for that question. I think from the upcoming budget, we can see that young people are not being prioritized. So making sure that we make actual investment in young people. We know that when we support young people here in the 9th Ward and in our city, we are going to be way better off in the future. So I would make sure that a big portion of that money goes towards youth employment programs, youth leadership programs, making sure we actually support young people here in our ward, because the young people here are the ones that are going to face the consequences of any decision that we make in the future. Making sure that part of that funding goes for climate action. We're in a big, deep trouble, and our city can help address the climate change that's about to happen in the 9th Ward and in our city. Making sure that we push for incentives for sustainability for our business corridors, using that money to support that, and making sure we expand our public transit system to ensure that money is going to ensure that working people can get around the city, making sure that they can go around our corridor, and making sure that we can actually expand a public transit system to help our community members here that are struggling.
Thank you so much, candidate Chavez. The same question to you, candidate Haji. The city of Minneapolis received about $270 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. The city has allocated most of those funds in ways that should help businesses, residents, and government agencies recover from lost wages, profits, and missing revenue due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How would you invest the remaining $50 million of these funds? You have 2 minutes. Your time starts now.
Thank you, Tavita, for that question again. For me, Ward 9, this is my focus, from Lake Streets all the way to 38. So many minority-owned businesses that are going through some tough times due to COVID, due to insecurity, due to many, many, many reasons. And we need to retain those businesses. We want to make sure those businesses stay in Ward 9. So I want to invest in that. One of the issues that I got from Lake Street, especially from our Muslim East African neighbors, is the issue of no interest loan. They don't want to take loan that is based on interest. So that's something I'm willing to look at and see if we can find a way to fund their businesses this way. Also, youth program, right? Our youth, inclusive of opioid crisis. Our Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities are going through some tough times as we speak right now, our youth. So I want to divert some of these fundings to that youth program so they can have a space, they can have after school program, they can play basketball, we can invest in neighborhood organizations, churches, mosques to support in this initiative so that these communities have access to a place where they can all collectively feel safe and feel home. I've seen it happen and we can do it. And more importantly, also, I want to rebuild Lake Street. So many buildings have gone down for violence, for people out because of insecurity, people occupying buildings for no. So I want to divert that. Also, we should have research. I'm willing to look into the future and finding research for how we can invest in renewable energy manufacturing here in Ward 9 and in Minneapolis. We have two great institutions, Augsburg and University of Minnesota. We have great brains. Put money in there. Let's find solution for the world.
Thank you so much, candidate Haji. And to you, candidate Moore, the same question. The city of Minneapolis received about $270 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. The city has allocated most of those funds in ways that should help businesses, residents, and government agencies recover from lost wages, profits, and missing revenue due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How would you invest the remaining $50 million of those funds? You have 2 minutes. Your time starts now.
Well, let me just clean up a little bit of the housekeeping around the issue itself. it's not just the city funds that need to flow to Ward 9. It's a significant portion of the county funds that were specifically allocated for this same purpose. Additionally, there is another round of stimulus funding that's going to be coming in May of 2022. So when we look at this 50 million, we need to look at it in comprehensive totality of everything that is available. Also, much of the money that has been already allocated, although it is supposed to go toward businesses and towards restorative funding, has been spread around and picked off piece by piece. And so we have lost a considerable amount of what should have been coming to us to begin with. What I would suggest is making sure that we elect the right people that have the practical real world experience and the business expertise to know how to efficiently and effectively apply the last remaining funds so that our businesses can grow, so that we're looking at that investment and the growth on the investment. You know, we just recently had an opportunity slip through our hands with the East Phillips Urban Farm Initiative. Over a couple of bucks, a few $1 million, we let an awesome economic opportunity that addressed issues like affordable housing, renewable energy, positive climate change impact, the respect for indigenous land rights, an issue that would have brought our community together and created unity and support within our city, was left on the wayside because of the way our city council so dysfunctionally disconnects itself from our city government. So I think proper leadership will give our city the chance to effectively and efficiently disperse and acquire more fundings through public-private partnerships that really restore and revitalize all of our business districts.
Thank you so much, Candidate Moore. We now will go on to our next question from one of our attendees, and it states, I own a business near the former 3rd Precinct headquarters. After years of harassment, threats, and assault against neighborhood businesses by 3rd Precinct officers, plus decades of promises to reform the police from politicians, what's your plan to keep business owners, our employees, and our customers safe from the police as we rebuild and reopen in a post-COVID, post-uprising era? So the last time we started with Candidate Short, this question we will begin with Candidate Chavez. Candidate Chavez, you have 2 minutes and your time begins now.
Yeah, so I appreciate this question a lot. I'm a supporter of question number 2, and I want to make sure that we build a new system of public safety that centers people, that reduces violence in our neighborhoods, and that addresses the root causes of violence while making sure that we can live in a world where we don't have to fear for our lives from the Minneapolis Police Department. I think it's about improving a public safety system where you don't have to fear for your life when you're driving and being scared of being pulled over by the police, when you don't have to fear for your life when you're crossing down the road on Lake Street thinking you might get shot down. It's about building a public safety system where you don't fear for your life by the person that is meant to protect and serve you. I think it's a good opportunity right now to use the money that I helped pass at the Capitol of the $80 million to help pass and support small businesses that our Lake Street corridor is going to have access to. It's an opportunity for them to rebuild and have a safe place to rebuild the corridor. It's also about making changes to our police department, right? This new Department of Public Safety will allow us to have more oversight and more accountability measures to keep the police department accountable, making sure that we release data, public data on who's being hurt most, making sure that we see which communities of color are being impacted for what reasons, and making sure we actually make changes to the department. So I appreciate that question. A lot of our community members are scared right now for many reasons, whether it's a police department working with Immigration and Customs Enforcement that is scaring a lot of our communities of color, whether it's a past support for CVE funding that has been used to criminalize our East African community. We got to make deep changes, and we need to make sure that happens.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez. The same question to you, Candidate Haji, and it states, I own a business near the former 3rd Precinct headquarters. After years of harassment, threats, and assault against neighborhood businesses by 3rd Precinct officers, plus decades of promises to reform the police from politicians, what's your plan to keep business owners, our employees, and our customers safe from the police as we rebuild and reopen in a post-COVID, post-uprising era? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Well, first of all, I am a father of 4, a Black father. So I think it's time to say it, that you need us, Black, Indigenous community in Ward 9 to be at the City Hall to effect some of these changes. Because your fear is my fear every day for my children when they turn 14 years old and moving on. We fear. Black and brown indigenous communities fear more, have fear of the police. So it's important for me and paramount for me to make sure that I am going to be sitting there to the end to make sure I reform the police. Because I understand when I'm speaking for countless of fathers and mothers and daughters and sons and everybody that calls Ward 9 home, that I am going to make sure that we do them right. And as a businessman, we need to hold police accountable if they break the law. We want the police to enforce the law, not break the law. January 6th, as you all know, and before January 20th, Biden inauguration, there was a background check on National Guardsmen. And they found 25 National Guardsmen had affiliation to right-wing militia. And we have the same here in Minneapolis PD. So I want to do a background check, a social media background check for all police officers. I want to make sure, like I said, I support the 21 DFL bill that is calling at the state and our legislature that includes 2-year requirements for police officers to live in our community before they become full police officers. After 2 years, they can move out. But they should know and they should be well acquainted with the communities that they're going to serve, including individuals, families, our collective safety, and also our businesses. This is what I'm going to make sure, and this is what I'm going to fight for.
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. Candidate Moore, the same question to you. I own a business near the former 3rd Precinct headquarters. After years of harassment, threats, and assault against neighborhood businesses by 3rd Precinct officers, plus decades of promises to reform the police from politicians, what's your plan to keep business owners, our employees, and our customers safe from the police as we rebuild and reopen in a post-COVID, post-uprising era? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Well, as someone who's owned small businesses throughout Minneapolis for over 30 years, I can appreciate this question. As a minority business owner and a minority-oriented business, this is a question that I've had to wrestle with myself on a personal level. Right now, we're in an unprecedented moment of real opportunity. We have, for the first time in our history, a chief of police who understands the systemic racism and discrimination within our department and has vowed and pledged to do something about it in terms of making meaningful and significant institutional reforms and changes. We have a brand new police union president who has committed herself to a new attitude towards cooperating with our city council, our department, our citizens in making a better police union and a better police department that cooperatively partners with our community that they serve. We also have a mayor who is committed to supporting our police department and a public that is, for once, united unanimously around the idea of police reform, real, meaningful, and significant police reform. So I believe that for the first time in our history, we're at a point where we can actually do significant changes, meaningful upgrades, real improvements within our training, our accountability, the awareness, the public messaging, the understanding that all our police officers have, that they will absolutely be held to swift and immediate accountability. We've never prosecuted a police officer at the level that we prosecuted the person that that murdered George Floyd. So we are undergoing a historic sea change of the way we work with our police to make sure that they understand that they're being held accountable at all times.
Thank you, Candidate Moore. And to you, Candidate Short, the same question. I own a business near the former 3rd Precinct headquarters. After years of harassment, threats, and assault against neighborhood businesses by 3rd Precinct officers, plus decades of promises to reform the police from politicians, what's your plan to keep business owners, our employees, our customers safe from police as we rebuild and reopen in a post-COVID and post-uprising era? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Thank you. I totally agree with this question, and I don't believe what's on the ballot really focus on reforming. I've been asked this question several times, and my plan is the first thing I would do is have the insurance, police officers to have their own liability insurance. Putting liability insurance on our police officers makes them first be responsible. Second of all, it will save the money of the property tax owners and the businesses in the area. Second, I would put in place is a misconduct team. The current misconduct team is totally attached to the police officer and they're friends with them. I would like that team separate, not even in the same building, because I want to make sure that our police officers are responsible for all their actions, what they do, and treated fairly by the community. This misconduct team will oversee any misconduct that came up, and they will, if there is any needs to mediate, instead of going to court, it will go to mediation. If it goes to mediation, 2 people from the city, citizens from the city, 2 police officers, 1 from the ward, 1 outside the ward, and 2 people from that misconduct team will oversee them. All 6 people will never meet each other. Due to COVID, we have learned that this can be done. So, and I separate all of these people is because I want them to be safe for whatever answer they give or how the settlement is done. I don't want the police officers ever to be named. I don't want the citizen to ever be named or the misconduct team, because that is the safety of all the 6 people. If a mediation comes up and the settlement needs to be done, that police officer will go on suspension without pay, because I'm tired of paying people. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for the short, but your time has elapsed. We have another question from one of our attendees, and Candidate Haji, we're going to start with you. This question is about 3 different ballot initiatives. How will you vote on each of the 3 ballot questions facing Minneapolis voters this year? Do you support or oppose these ballot initiatives or questions, and why? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now, Candidate Haji. So you're still on mute, Candidate Haji. Okay, thank
Okay, now you can hear me. I do not believe in strong mayor. This is a democracy. I want representation. We have wards that have always been marginalized, been left behind. We want our voices in there. So I am not for strong mayor. 2, I am no on I'm no. I want police reform. As a father of 4, you have to understand that I'm raising 3 boys and 1 girl that are going to be part of the policing and the future of policing in Minneapolis. So when I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about that. I'm not only thinking about my children, I'm thinking about every child in Ward 9. And please, we are the people who are greatly affected by police brutality. Historically, for 250 years, it's the police that have been brutal to our communities, killing us for no reason. So don't question why I'm supporting no. I am saying, and by the way, I do support some of the proposal on the yes, on that. So hopefully we can all come around in a place where we agree and move Minneapolis forward with the future. Do I want to see a future where we're all collectively safe and no one is left behind? Yes. And I'm willing to open my ears and listen and move forward on that. More about my reform, you can check on my website and the ideas that I have. I support rent stabilization. I think it's, for me, more importantly, we can use it as a vehicle to help those who are homeless, and rents are very expensive. Our communities need to be safe. Our immigrant community need to be safe. They need shelter. Rents are raising high. Income is low. We need to do something about it. And we must come from a place of empathy as a community. We must lead with empathy. A lot of our homeless solutions can be dealt with a simple solution of supporting them and processing them to have a home or housing or homelessness.
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. The same question to you, Candidate Moore. How will you vote on each of the 3 ballot questions initiatives facing Minneapolis voters this year? Do you support or oppose these ballot questions or initiatives? And please explain why. You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Initiative number 1, the Strong Mayor Initiative, I support that. As much as it would be great to wait around for a strong leader to arise on their own organically by creating grassroots support from the electorate or by responding positively in moments of crisis, we don't have the luxury of waiting for perfect conditions. Our city government is completely dysfunctional, and we need to do everything we can to make it more effective and more efficient. And a strong mayor system, the same system that almost every large city in the country operates with, will help us accomplish that. As far as ballot initiative number 2, from the very beginning, I have been opposed to this initiative. It's the most dangerous and irresponsible initiative I can even imagine. We're in the throes of a public safety crisis. We need more police, not less. We need more police resources. We absolutely need police reform, more accountability, more transparency, better improvements and upgrades to our operating system. But the idea of getting rid of the police department is absurd. In fact, the most important and impactful condition on how we vote on this ought to be, what do the people in the ward think? And the vast majority of Ward 9 residents and businesses are strongly opposed to this initiative because they realize it does nothing for their sense of safety. Regarding the rent stabilization initiative, rent control doesn't work. We'd love to lower our rents. We have an affordable housing crisis. Rent is too high, but rent control policies don't work. They make the situation worse. We need to attack our affordable housing crisis where it really exists through the supply and demand dynamic. We can lower rental demand by transitioning renters into home ownership. That's what creates generational wealth. We can increase our supply by focusing on public housing, government housing, working our vacant lots, abandoned buildings, etc.
Thank you, Candidate Moore. Candidate Short, the same question to you. How will you vote on each of the 3 ballot initiatives and questions facing Minneapolis voters this year? Do you support or oppose these ballot questions/initiatives, and why? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
I oppose question number 1. Yes, one person should not have that kind of control. The city, citizens of Minneapolis should have the right to contact someone, and the mayor is never answering their phones. And that's why you have a representative in your ward to support you as a citizen. For number 2, I'm gonna have to say no to that as well. Nothing in number 2 is about police reform. There's nothing that states that we saying yes will reform these police and have liability for their actions. And number 2, it breaks my heart to say this, but I'm gonna have to say no to rent control. And that's because we're already in a $82 million debt for the going forward. And to break that number down, $20 million is a settlement for Justine's death. $27 million is for George Floyd death. And we just 2.5 weeks ago, $35 million on police deciding to leave our area. Those will hit the property tax owners and the business owners' property taxes. So I would have to say no to that, because if our property taxes are going up and the rent control is at a level that the rent, there's a number of reasons where a homeowner or a business owner can sell their business or property to a corporate America. And there's so many loopholes right now. There's not a correct way to do rent control. And I would have to say no. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Short. And to you, Candidate Chavez, can you please let us know how you will vote on each of the 3 ballot questions initiatives facing Minneapolis voters this year? Do you support or oppose these ballot questions, and why? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Yeah, so for question 1, the quote unquote government structure amendment, I do not support. And it's because it removes the executive committee that is supposed to conduct performance reviews of department heads, and it vets potential appointees of commissioners to the city of Minneapolis. It is a dangerous thing to get rid of an accountability measure. I want to make sure that we keep an accountability measure if we're to make changes to our city structure. It also makes it sure that the mayor of Minneapolis can fire and discipline commissioners without the approval of the city council. Again, another method of accountability that is being removed from the people of Minneapolis. And it's essentially a transfer of power away from people that are more poor to the people that have more money and are wealthy. I do not support it, and I would recommend people to vote no. For the Department of Public Safety, I do support it. I believe we need to actually fund a public safety system that keeps our community safe. And the current system of public safety is not doing much to reduce the crime and violence that's happening in our neighborhoods. And it's also not even addressing the police violence that is occurring in our ward. I want to make sure that we have an open accountability method and a window of police accountability, and this department will help us get there. Y'all probably saw the recent videos on Lake Street where the police department said they wanted to hunt people on Lake Street. They were shooting rubber bullets, hurting and criminalizing our small business owners that were protecting their own small businesses on Lake Street. We need to make sure we pass a public safety system that keeps our community safe, and that's why I support it. I also do support rent stabilization. It's about democracy. It's about letting the people of Minneapolis vote on a rent control, rent stabilization policy, making sure we don't have corporate loopholes that displace people. But we need to do more than that. We need to make sure there's wraparound services for single room occupancy, that we have public housing, that we have just cause notice, pre-eviction filings, and that our buildings are up to code with fire safety. We need to make sure that rent control is part of it, but we need to do more than just that.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez. Now we're pivoting to another question from one of our attendees tonight. We will start with Candidate Moore. Candidate Moore, the question states, what is your most brilliant regenerative vision of Lake Street? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
What a great question, because Lake Street is unique in its opportunity to be a brilliant vision of how a city can operate across cultures, across communities, in a collaborative partnership with government to really provide economic opportunities that people can only dream of. One of the things that people have to understand about why it is so important to revitalize Lake Street and create the kind of vibrant economy is, and this is a little bit global, I hope it doesn't go over people's heads, but a lot of the businesses on Lake Street are immigrant-owned businesses. And a lot of the economy that is generated on Lake Street ends up all around the world, from Africa to Asia to South and Central America and beyond. It's important that we keep these businesses vital and vibrant because we are actually supporting countries all over the world through our commerce and our economy. Through our support of these culturally based businesses, we are helping to support countries that are going through real turmoil, civil war in Syria and East Africa, problems throughout Central America that we don't have to deal with here at that level, and situations throughout Asia and the Middle East that we read about and hear about on the news. So it's of critical international importance that we make sure to prioritize our local economy because it really has international implications, global implications. So I envision a cultural center like Midtown Global Market all up and down Lake Street. There are malls and businesses that people don't even know about because they don't live here, they don't go there, but we need to make sure that the public is aware of what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Candidate Moore. The same question to you, Candidate Short, and it is, just 1 second, what is your most brilliant regenerative vision of Lake Street? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Thank you. I vision Lake Street as a wonderful place that it used to be. I enjoy going to many, many events that used to happen on Lake Street, such as May Day parades and other events. But I vision in the future for Lake Street to have more family events like the Christmas parade, such as parties in the street for Day of the Dead, because I always go to the suburbs to get those, take my family to. I want to start bringing those kind of events to our neighborhood because we have those different cultures. We have people with those visions. And that's the vision I like to see Lake Street in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Short. Candidate Chavez, the same question to you. Can you please share what is your most brilliant regenerative vision of Lake Street? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Yeah, so this question is very personal to me. Like I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised in the 9th Ward, and Lake Street is a place of survival for a lot of our Black, Brown, Indigenous, and immigrant neighbors that speak a language of survival, whether it's Somali or Spanish or any other language that is the melting pot of our community. The heart of Minneapolis is Lake Street. It's what we breathe, it's what we eat, and it's a place that we continue to build to make sure that we can all come together, to make sure we can fight for our lives. It's a place that's been underinvested in, that's been forgotten about, and that's been pushed behind for decades by government. Lake Street can be a place that is statewide, that is national, that can be a place where we create sustainable methods of regenerative methods to make sure that we can actually create our local economy here. I think more than ever, we can ensure that Lake Street is a place where we can feel safe, where people can feel accessible, whether they're walking, rolling, or taking bus. It's a place where we can all come together as a melting pot of our city to make sure that we can continue to fight for a better world. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that Lake Street can be a model that people can follow, like the Midtown Global Market. It's a place where we all come together. So, yep.
Thank you, Candidate Chavez. And to you, Candidate Haji, if you could please share, what is your most brilliant regenerative vision of Lake Street? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
And I'm going to add George Floyd Square as well into this, but Lake Street. This is my clear vision for Lake Street, because we have so many countries represented on Lake Street, from Africa, from our southern neighbors, our Latino community, and many other cultures. There's food, there's culture, there's community, and they do things differently from other places than Minneapolis. And there's also a fear. It's like the Lion King story, right? And where the lion dad tells his son, don't go over there, right? This is what our neighbors around Minneapolis see Ward 9. But I see it as a different, I see it as a potential for one tourist attraction. We can turn that part of Lake Street into a tourist attraction, because why? We have everything that we need, and we should promote it as such. A place where anybody in Minneapolis and Minnesota can come visit, whether you want to grab a sambusa, empanada, or you want just, have a Moroccan breakfast, or you want to have all different kind of clothes and cultures that you can really wear in the evening. They're so comfortable, by the way. You should always try the sambusas. They're great. The other thing that I envision is also promoting, putting money and resources into these communities. They need it. And they can bring so much opportunity for the rest of Minneapolis. Safety is more important than anything. You cannot have a vision that looks forward without the safety. We must have police, we must have community, neighborhood organization, and everybody coming together to make this unique space ours, because we will never get an opportunity like this. And this is what I see for the future of Lake.
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. We now have another question from one of our attendees, and it states, and we'll start with you, Candidate Short. What would the candidates do to create economic development and particularly good paying jobs in Ward 9? You have 2 minutes, Candidate Short, and your time starts now.
I would first say what they can do to we need to bring more visitors back into our ward. And that is to first bring public safety back into our ward and to make it more feasible for families to be wanting to visit our ward. So I would definitely see a great future for Lake Street. It once was called Midtown, and I believe Midtown should be renamed. And thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Short. The same question to you, Candidate Chavez. What would you do to create economic development and particularly good paying jobs in Ward 9? You have 2 minutes and your time starts.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So like I mentioned earlier, I work at the Minnesota House of Representatives. I work on the Workforce and Business Development Committee. So my job is creating jobs statewide, and I'm going to use the connection and experience I've learned from this job to make sure we bring jobs to the 9th Ward. We need someone that is ready, someone that has the experience, and someone that already knows how to bring jobs here. And I have that experience. I want to make sure that we have youth employment opportunities here, making sure that our Step Up program is actually equipped to support our young people, making sure we can actually expand it, not have any grade ramifications of whether people can access this program or not. I'm a product of these programs. I went to school at Cristo Rey High School on Lake Street, and I was put to work at the age of 14 at Wells Fargo for 3 years in Regents Hospital, my final year of high school. And these programs help support people like me. It made sure I stayed out of trouble, and it made sure I led a good path once I graduated from college as well. We need to make sure that our jobs not only have good paying jobs, but we have good labor protections, making sure there's fair scheduling, making sure if people work overtime that they should be paid for that overtime, making sure that we have workplace protections. There's opportunity to support our immigrant workers whose rights are being violated at work, our Black, Brown, and Indigenous community members. And it's important to take action on that, making sure that we work with our labor partners to bring union jobs to the ward. I have the most union endorsements in this race, and I'm proud of that. And I plan to work with our union siblings to bring jobs into the 9th Ward.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez. And to you, Candidate Haji, the same question. What would you do to create economic development and particularly good paying jobs in Ward 9? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
All right, number one, I will develop and deploy resources for and prioritize Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color in minority-owned businesses so that they will be able to support whatever endeavor and support that they need. Two, I want to support entrepreneurs who invest in the community. I want to create a climate in the impacted community that support community businesses with access to capital, mentorship, and also the right network resources to grow in place, hire from the community, and also so we can seed prosperity. I want to fight for business retention, develop and deploy resources to preserve in the community the businesses that have already been affected by COVID and also aftermath of George Floyd. I also, more importantly, I want to assure that resources are procured and develop, prioritize economic inclusion and quickly stabilize immediately impacted communities and create capacity to envision and launch projects with emphasis on healing and cultural awareness and wellness as well. So these are some of the ideas that I want to be able to fight for, to use my voice in whatever capacity. For me, the success of these communities, for me, is the success of Minneapolis. They are hugely invested by creating businesses, by creating jobs and opportunity for everyone in Ward 9. And this is what I want to look out for, and that's a priority for me if I'm elected as your next city councilman, next Black city councilman, first ever in Ward 9.
Thank you so much, Candidate Haji. Next to you, Candidate Moore, the same question. What would you do to create economic development and particularly good paying jobs in Ward 9? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Well, unlike some of my opponents, my experience isn't theoretical or embellished. I have 30 years of small business experience in creating an entire industry. Many of those businesses are currently active in Ward 9 and along Lake Street. Now, the hair braiding industry employs hundreds of African-American and immigrant people, but we can envision industries that employ thousands. One of the reasons why some of the largest trade unions and labor organizations have endorsed my campaign is because they recognize my history of professional experience in creating jobs. The Teamsters Union, the Carpenters Union, some of the wealthiest and largest unions in our state have endorsed me because of our commitment to work together to bring youth and immigrant communities into positions where they can get apprenticeships and training for some of these highest paying union wage jobs. Other industries exist that will be coming to the fore very soon, such as the legalization of marijuana. And when that happens, we need to be prepared as a city to make sure that we are capitalizing on that billion-dollar industry. Billion-dollar industries don't come around every day. And so we need to prepare ourselves now by having people with the professional leadership experience in creating industry that know how to provide accurate representation for our communities that deserve it. Those communities that have been historically challenged by the criminalization of marijuana and drug laws, to be able to become the beneficiaries of the new legalization and regulations, sales, distribution, taxation, etc. So we need to have people in place that have the professional experience and leadership to capitalize on the industry capacities that are coming soon.
Thank you, Candidate Moore. I just want to make a note that this is the last question before we will enter into the last segment of tonight's event, which is your closing statements as candidates. The last question, we will start with Candidate Chavez. You will have 2 minutes. How can we address the public's perception that it is not safe to visit, shop, work, or live in Minneapolis? You have 2 minutes, Candidate Chavez. Your time starts now.
I think that It's not about changing the public's perception, but rather addressing the real concerns of public safety that is occurring in our neighborhoods. We need to make sure that we have a holistic system of public safety that addresses the root causes of violence and addresses the long-term vision to ensure that violence doesn't happen in our communities, right? My campaign has a robust public safety plan. Like I mentioned earlier, it's calling for a public health crisis and epidemic on gun violence to ensure that we have evidence-based and culturally specific gun tracing programs to make sure that we can reduce gun violence in our community. It's calling for a community safety specialist program in our neighborhoods to make sure that there's actual first responders that can reduce escalation, reduce crime, and support our community members when they need help and need. And it's making sure that we have a revamped dispatch system to ensure that we send the right person at the right time to specific situations. I'm going to be a person that's going to lead the coordination effort here on Lake Street with Hennepin County to make sure we address the livability concerns that are happening, right? There's addiction that is happening. We can pass and support safe injection sites. We can address and support our unhoused neighbors that are struggling on Lake Street by making sure we can transition them into the support that they need with housing first policies, making sure that we actually support the people here on Lake Street, whether it's the people that are struggling or the small business owners that are sometimes scared. It's making sure that we pass policies that support our community members here. But I want to make it clear, if we address the livability concerns, like making sure that we have housing for all, that we have wages for our community, that we have mental health resources, and that we focus and fully fund the OVI office, the Office of Violence Prevention, we can actually get to a place where everyone can feel safe in our neighborhood, a place where we can feel free from violence and police violence at the same time.
Thank you so much, Candidate Chavez. Next to you, Candidate Haji, the same question. How can we address the public's perception that it is not safe to visit, shop, work, or live in Minneapolis? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
It's not a perception, it's a reality. That's what I'm hearing from businesses. That's what I'm hearing from community. For example, Jigjiga Business Center, we have business leaders who are being held ransom or people are demanding money from them for them to be safe. This is what we're dealing with. But for me, we need to bring confidence into our Ward 9. We need to bring confidence into our businesses on the street. And this is what I want to do. First, I want foot patrols. Police presence means prevention. We need to create neighborhood health professionals together with police officers dedicated to responding to lower priority calls for services and engaging the community. I believe we can push out the pimps and drug dealers from our neighborhood with neighborhood organizations, with professional health staff, and help, of course, with police presence. I would like to introduce for our community, not only businesses, but everybody, introduce a night out to include neighborhoods walks with senior officials and beat officers to build trust and awareness of issues that are important to residents. I want to promote community policing programs like foot patrol, like I mentioned, and meet and greet, listening session, and regular resident check-ins to build trust. I want community members, wherever they go, they can trust the police, they can trust the safety, and they can go and shop and be part of our community. More importantly, there's a disparity. We need to policies that address structural racism, such as access to credit, jobs, investment in affordable housing and low income, and our neighborhood segregation and poverty must end, and we must fight for it. And we need to do that. And that's why we need to have the city council that has the power, that has the voice, and our collective goodwill to push on these changes. We need each one of us to collectively come together and do it.
Thank you, Candidate Haji. The same question to you, Candidate Short. How can we address the public's perception that it is not safe to visit, shop, work, and live in Minneapolis? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
First, we need to show more positive vision of our ward. The media has no problem of showing all the bad, but they don't show a lot of the good that happens in Ward 9. We have our open mic poetry. We have the Pillsbury House that supports youth and adult plays. We have movies in the park and outdoor concerts. If we had more media to show us in a positive view than showing Minneapolis as the bad view, I think more people would be acceptable to come into our ward again. And we just need to work with the media to show the more good than the bad. like everyone on the panel sees, that there is a lot of good in Lake Street. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Short, and to you, candidate Moore. How can we address the public's perception that it's not safe to visit, shop, work, or live in Minneapolis? You have 2 minutes and your time starts now.
Well, like my brother Haji said, it's not a perception, it's reality. For specific neighborhoods, it is dangerous to come into Minneapolis right now. What we need to do to change that perception is to change the metrics, the measurables on the ground. We need to end the violence, end the violent crime and murders and shootings. Since the murder of George Floyd, Minneapolis has seen almost 150 murders. So we got to change those statistics, and we change that by increasing our police presence, by making a public awareness message out of building a new precinct. We make a public awareness message out of reestablishing our police substations and engaging foot patrols and community policing and hiring new officers that resemble our community, that reflect our diversity, by making sure that we have clean streets, by making sure that we address the homelessness issue, by making sure that we have beautification plans and projects. Lights, there are places where we don't have enough street lights. By installing more closed circuit security cameras and making sure that they're monitored. We can get to the bottom of these statistics and this data and this evidence that is driving the public perception by challenging ourselves to become a better, more improved, more upgraded, efficient, and effective police department. Once we improve public safety, then all of those things that Ms. Short was discussing, all the beautiful uplifting and nurturing aspects of Ward 9 will be all that's left for the media to report on. And I'm sure that we'll, with a combination of decreasing crime, increasing public safety, and highlighting all the beautiful, uplifting, and rewarding opportunities that come with our cultural diversity, will shift public perception. It will take some time. It will mostly take hard work, but we can get there.
Thank you, candidate Moore. We have reached the point in our evening. Well, this is entering not a question, but your closing statements to all of those that are listening. Please keep in mind that this is being recorded, so we will have an opportunity to share it across various platforms. We're going to begin with candidate Haji. Candidate Haji, you get 2 minutes to provide closing statements related to your candidacy. Your time starts now.
Like I said so many times, I am a father, parents, that is part of this collective community, this space in Ward 9 that we all call home. Very diverse, a fabric of representation, different colors, people, culture, and food. For me, this is personal also, as I saw and witnessed the death of George Floyd, and having a conversation with my children, and my children asking, why did the police kill George Floyd? So I'm thinking of that every day, and it's one of the reasons why I got into this race. But more importantly, for you, all of you, that have given me the opportunity and opened the doors for me during my door knocks, and meeting you in person in your house, in your neighborhood, I want to tell you thank you for giving me that opportunity. Just for me listening to you and having this conversation of where we want to go as a community moving forward, and where do we want to drive Minneapolis together, not divided, but together. I bring 15-year leaderships. It's time for a city council member who puts us first, who will fight for our collective safety. I will push for the city to invest in reducing chemical dependency, informed trauma care, and more mental health professions. I will help our small business struggling through COVID-19. I will protect the things that matter to our quality of life in Ward 9. From my 15 years of experience working as a mediator, I'll bring my valuable skills in unifying stakeholders, including the mayor, the city council, community members, businesses, the police department, neighborhood organizations. I want to bring us all together so we can all envision and move into a brighter, more better, more safer Minneapolis for all our children and collectively for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Haji. Candidate Short, over to you for your closing statements. You have 2 minutes and they begin now.
Thank you. I am a candidate that stands firmly on police reform, and I would love to make sure that that happens. I also stand for police safety because we need that back in our neighborhood. I want to support all small businesses, all new ones that want to come to Ward 9, but also all the current ones that need the financial support. I am standing firm on our homeowners to make sure that the police will become more liable for their actions, so we don't have to pay for another misconduct in the future and making us pay for something that we are not responsible for. And just to let you know, I am a clear person of belief in clear change. Again, my name is Brenda Short, and I'm running for Ward 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Short. Now we will ask Candidate Moore to provide your closing comments. You have 2 minutes and they begin now.
Thank you, and thank you for your hospitality. Hopefully you've seen some of the key differences in what the candidates say and offer. While we all agree this is an extremely concerning time for our city, we have a serious rise in crime and a crisis in confidence in our police department. Businesses have been devastated. We've never addressed the affordable housing issue, the homelessness issue. People feel disconnected from government. We're suffering from a crisis of leadership, especially in the city council, where no one wants to solve problems. I'm the only labor and public safety endorsed candidate. I received this support because people understand that we need a mature and disciplined leader with a long track record of success to reassure our community that we're electing someone we trust and who will get the job done. That's why I'm running. I developed an entire industry, and I know how to create real economic opportunities, even for our hardest to employ communities. Our ward needs someone with enough real world business experience to properly and articulately advocate for the specific needs of our ward, especially our small, minority, and immigrant owned businesses. All areas of expertise for me. I've already begun working with our police chief, our police union president and vice president, and our mayor to begin working to reimagine a city government that works better for us today and in our future. We need someone with a decades-long record of accomplishments, not some radical extremist trying to capitalize on our troubled times. That's why I'm asking for you to vote for me and rank me as your #1 choice for city council in the 9th Ward. I encourage you to go to my website, weneedmore.org. Contact me directly. You can call me up. My phone number is right there. Join me in helping to make our city safer, stronger, more equitable, and more prosperous. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thank you, Candidate Moore. And now to you, Candidate Chavez. If you could share your closing comments, you have 2 minutes and they begin now.
Thank you. The 9th Ward is my home. My parents fled from Mexico when I was younger than I am now and came to the East Phillips neighborhood where I was later born. My parents worked more than 3 jobs each just to keep food on the table. And yet when I was 13 years old, we were evicted from our own home and left homeless. Our community members here are breathing polluted air, don't have safe and clean drinking water, and are eating food from contaminated soil. I grew up in a community scarred by the policy failures, a community that's been left behind and undersupported. And when I grew up in a displaced household, closeted as a scared Latino kid, I remember swearing to myself that I would never let anybody go through this again. We don't have to live like this. I know what it feels like to have a system that doesn't support you, and I know what it feels like to have a government system that does not care about you. But I also know what it feels like to have a system in government that supports our personal lives, from securing tens of millions of dollars for our Lake Street corridor, to traveling the state fighting for immigration justice, to organizing rapid community relief for our neighborhoods during the COVID-19 pandemic. I know what it takes to support our community members here. And our community deserves so much more. I will fight every single day to make sure that we have safer streets, cleaner air, cleaner water, affordable housing, accessible transit, and an equitable system of public safety. I'm running for city council because I believe our city government can be a part of the solution, even if it always hasn't been the case. I'm running for city council to fight for the ward that helped raise me, and I know better days are possible, and I'm ready to fight for that ward. I'm Jason Chavez. I'm the DFL, DSA, and labor endorsed candidate for the Minneapolis City Council here in the 9th Ward. And I look forward to lead beside you with our community-led, community-centered 9th Ward.
Thank you. We did it. Thank you, candidates, for participating in our event this evening. It is important that voters hear directly from you about issues that matter, and we are grateful for your time and your willingness to talk about the health and the recovery of the Lake Street corridor and so many other important issues. For candidates who would like to do so, please share in the chat at this moment an email address or contact page for voters to follow up if they have additional questions. This is an opportunity to make sure you can stay connected to some of those who were able to attend tonight's event and those who will listen to this recording in the future. To all those who were able to attend, thank you for joining us this evening. If you have any other questions related to the recovery along Lake Street, you can contact candidates through the information they're sharing here. Be sure to follow one or all hosting organizations on Facebook, as a recording of this forum will be made available on their pages. Again, those hosting organizations are the Corcoran Neighborhood Association, the Longfellow Business Association, the Lake Street Council, and Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. We'll just pause just one moment just to make sure all candidates have had an opportunity to drop their contact information in the chat. And it does look so that everyone has had an opportunity to do that, just that. With that, there's not much else for us to share this evening. Again, you have our gratitude, you have our appreciation, not only to the candidates for you being so bold to consider that you would be the next leader of Ward 9 in service of this community. We thank you for your interest in being able to do so and to do this work. You are already demonstrating your commitment, not only to your families and your communities, but to a better Minneapolis. With that, we will close tonight's event. We thank you for your time and we look forward to seeing you in different spaces. To all of you, I wish you all the best, all the health and safety, not just physical safety, that this moment in life has to offer you. Have a good evening.